Steve.
Hey, what's going on, man?
Hey, great to meet you, Steve.
Nice to meet you.
It's a pleasure to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, no problem. I'm just
You look
something.
confused.
something I got like a new setup now. I'm always trying to like make something a little better, and then it kind of shows up funny differently on different screens.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
cool.
Hey, man, your work is awesome. Just,
Hey, thank you so much.
yeah, it's just amazing. I love the color. And it's, yeah, you're one of those artists out there that really knows how to control color.
Yeah, it's definitely been a long, lifelong pursuit. Takes a lot to actually execute that in oil paint. But yeah, it's one of the things I'm really interested in.
So tell me about yourself. Where do you reside right now?
So me and my wife and three kids live on Long Island in Glen Cove. We moved out here after I got my master's at the New York Academy of Art, and I was teaching for a guy named Robert Armetta who,
Mm-hmm.
who ran this atelier out here, and then he decided to move on, and me and my wife kind of took it over, and we've been running this school for about 10 or 11 years.
Well, who's your wife?
Rebecca Forster.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look her up. That's awesome.
Well, well, we're homeschooling three kids, so she's kind of not been making as much art. But we met at the Florence Academy of Art. She's a sculptor,
Really?
amazing, amazing sculptor.
Really? You
Yeah,
homeschool three kids? No kidding. How old are your kids?
I give Rebecca the credit for that.
Yeah, well, granted, but yeah, but I'm just curious how old they are.
12, 9, and 2.
Really? And you chose to homeschool. That's great. I homeschooled two of my kids. Well, we sort of did it together. They homeschooled at the studio, believe it or not.
Oh wow,
Yeah.
that's cool.
Yeah,
And they,
well, okay, that's not fair. They schooled online. So it's not like I was sitting there actually giving them instruction. They were home and they were schooling. So it's sort of like hybrid thing.
well, yeah, if you get up to a certain level, you kind of need that online presence. But
Yeah.
it's been really good. We started a year before the pandemic, and so then things
Wow,
didn't.
timing was great.
I know things didn't get weird for them. I feel like we had like a nationwide experiment
Yeah, no kidding.
with
And
kids at home. Yeah.
that's great. So, where are you originally from?
Well, I was born in Boston, but raised in Florida. Then went to the Florence Academy of Art for a couple of years, came to New York for my master's, and now I'm on Long Island.
Wow, you've had some education. Jeez. And who'd you study with at oh, gee, I'm not drawing a blank now. Remind me, New York, the where you studied.
Oh, at the New York
New York
Academy?
Academy. It's so obvious. Dude,
Uh,
I don't know if you can tell by my eyes, but I didn't sleep last night.
I hear
I've
you.
still got the puffy face from I just was waking up.
Yeah, no problem.
So, who'd you study with at New York Academy?
Oh man, there was just so many people there. It's really different than an atelier training. It's really kind of it's kind of a little bit of a free for all. There's all kinds of different artists, and they don't agree on anything.
Really?
And you're just meeting a lot of people at the top of their field. And if you can, glean something from them, it's really great. I mean, there's the core teachers as well, but there's just so many visiting critics and different speakers and different opportunities there that it's really like a melting pot of a kind of school. I mean, I suppose there's a curriculum.
You
I don't want to say
suppose.
that there's, yeah, but I don't want to say that there isn't like some kind of curriculum because of course there
Yeah.
is. But it's a little bit more a la carte, than like an atelier training where it's like you got to swim this way to
Mm-hmm.
have things work out, and that was kind of a bit of a rude awakening for me.
Yeah, how did that? I mean, do you feel like your Atelier training prepared you for that, or do you feel like it was sort of made it difficult to go into that style of training?
I don't know. I mean, I guess you can, experience life in so many different ways, but I mean, I think it was like I liked the way that my training went. I went to like a 2-year like state art school
Mm-hmm.
it was kind of like a community college art experiment in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where I met my best friend Steve Bauman, and I talked him into going to Florence Academy with me. And but that school, that training that we both received there, like I liked being in that small school in Florida where it was kind of like there was theater, there was set design, there was graphic design, and we were in the middle of nowhere. It was just rural Florida. I think the town's name literally means cow crossing.
Mm.
And but you could just focus. You could really focus on your craft and kind of be exposed to a lot of different things. And then my teacher was wise enough to say, Steve, you got to get out of here. You got to go and get that kind of training that you wanted. And this was like really kind of in the beginning of the atelier movement. I was looking at the Jeffrey Mims School, and then there was one in Chicago with this guy Bruno Cerdo. And then there was a Florence Academy, and my teacher had studied in Europe a number of years, and it changed his life. And he's like, "Buddy, you got to go to Florence. Forget all this other stuff. You got to go there because you're gonna get the Italian experience as well." And his encouragement really helped me kind of try to make that happen. Um, and so I tried to talk my buddy Steve into going, and he was like, "Well, what is all this classical stuff?" He was a graffiti artist at the time.
Stephen Bowman was a graffiti artist?
Oh yeah, yeah. I
No
mean,
joke.
yeah, yeah. I know. We're lifelong best friends. We'd like lived together for many years, and I love him. He's like my brother from another mother.
Yeah, I got to get him
Um,
on here.
oh yeah, he's great. So I tried to kind of talk him into it. And he's like, okay, whatever. Well, yeah, we'll give it a try. And then we heard nothing for, I don't know, like a year and a half. Like I really wanted to go, and
What do you mean you heard nothing? You applied and got no response?
I don't like they just said, hey, you're on a list. It was really like the days kind of, I mean, there was email, but like people weren't really communicative. And one day I just got like a letter in the mail. Like I was like, I don't know, I
Dang,
could have
old
been
school.
somewhere else. I know, I got like this little packet and they're like, hey, you're in. Can you be here in a couple months? And we were like, yeah, let's go. And so, anyways, that introduction at a small art school where you could experience a lot of different things and not have a lot of distractions,
Mm-hmm.
and then getting a classical education at the Florence Academy where there's a certain way you do things, and then going to the New York Academy, it was like kind of really a pretty well-rounded experience, in my opinion. I really liked the way that it worked out for me.
So you said you got your master's at New York Academy. Where did you get your
Mhm.
bachelor's?
Oh, that's true. So the 2-year school that me and Steve went to, I got my associates, and then they said go to Italy, and I studied, and I thought I'd be a professor or something. So then I came back, and I got, me and Rebecca got married and wanted to kind of start our American life. And I went to school in Jacksonville, the University of North Florida, and I kind of got my bachelor's in a year there. I kind of tried to rush it so that then I could, get my master's somewhere.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. That was a really roundabout way of telling your story. So I want to make sure I didn't miss anything. Is there any other places you went? We got four schools.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Okay.
That's about it.
So you said you were at Florence Academy for just a couple years. Did you get through the entire program in that time?
No, there was a technicality where it's like you had to be there for 3 years, but then there was like a checklist where there was like, if you do these things. One of the things I really loved about the academy was, in the college system, you take a semester and you're in there with people that like maybe aren't trying so hard and you're trying
Mm-hmm.
really hard and everybody gets an A and you don't have to really, you could just mail it in and it's just like you're on this kind of slow track. I felt at the Florence Academy, it was like, here's the work. If you do it and we check it off, you pass, you move on. And that was like really motivating for me. I was like, wow. So I could really do this as fast as I could, and I was on a real limited budget, and um, there wasn't loans to go really. So like you kind of had to do some fundraising, and they had scholarships for second year students. So I was just really trying to go as fast as I could. That young man tendency, like let's
Mm-hmm.
just get as fast as we can. And I completed the checklist, but I didn't graduate the painting program because I wasn't there for 3 years.
Okay. And that's just due to budget or
Well, it was a few things. I won't go into all of them, but me
oh,
and
now you
Rebecca.
got me curious.
But yeah, I can't be like 100% honest on a podcast. But me and Rebecca wanted to kind of start our, you know, life together, and
Did she go out there with
yeah,
you?
there was some budget stuff there as well. Like I was just a young struggling artist, and kind of really what it was more than anything was that I wanted a path for being a professor somewhere. I just didn't I had this safety issue of like, what am I doing? I need to have safety in my life. I want to be a professor and
Mm-hmm.
like a stable job, and I want a family. When you put family into the mix of things, it kind of shifts your goals a bit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so that's kind of I wanted a path towards that, and I never did it, and it's worked out just fine afterwards. So
Well, that's interesting. Yeah, because now you kind of run your own place. So not kinda, you do run your own place.
yeah,
Yeah.
and Rebecca, so I met Rebecca there. She's from Tennessee.
At
Um,
Florence.
yeah, and
Okay. Okay.
I was like a young romantic. I couldn't wait to be married. Like I wanted to be married when I was like 14. So I went to Italy and I thought, oh man, I'm never gonna meet somebody
I'm
here
never gonna
because
mate. It's Freudian,
well,
Freudian.
Freudian slip,
Yeah, seriously.
Freudian slip. But I thought, oh, I'm never gonna meet somebody here because like Italian women, they don't like American men. So like, what are the chances of finding my wife in Italy in this like class of 50? Or like
Hmm.
but like it worked out, and actually Steve met his wife. We all that whole crew kind of had a few marriages formed from that year. Steve and Cornelia got married. We were all studio mates, and that was the one
No
thing Dan
kidding.
Graves, yeah, that was the one thing Dan Graves was really happy about when he first gave the interview there. He's the director of the school and the visionary. He said he was the most proud of the marriages that were formed out of that school.
No way. Serious?
And I thought, wow,
He's a bit of a romantic himself.
that's really sweet. So,
Yeah. You
anyways,
hear a lot about that. Grand Central Academy has a few marriages too.
yeah, well, I guess it makes sense. You're all kind of aligned with a lot of your goals and similar temperament, and
Yeah.
people who have sacrificed kind of everything to just kind of see if this can work for them. You might find somebody that resonates with your heart.
Right. Right. That's great, man. So, how did you transition out of education into starting your own atelier?
Well, it's not really an atelier. It was sort of started, Robert had sort of a group of atelier students, and it's kind of we're here on a peninsula.
Mm-hmm.
So it's actually like a real strong community. You don't see people for like a year or two and then they move on. You kind of really grow with people. So a lot of people went through Robert's atelier training and were really grounded in a lot of drawing and um, classical education. And then they're like, when do we paint, Robert? And when do we, apply these things to what we want to do as artists? And so that was kind of more when I started to take it over. And I had a few atelier students for a while, but in a small community, it's kind of hard to hold on and get people to have that focus, especially with so many options these days. So I kind of custom tailor it to the student and what they need. And some people really need to go through that kind of training, and other people, they're a little bit further down the path.
Hmm. That's interesting. And how many students do you have there?
Well, we usually measure it through how many people are enrolled in classes. So we have 6 classes a week, or six, we have classes 6 days a week, and then we have an open studio on the other one. And So there's probably around 100 enrolled. Sometimes it's like repeated people, like the same person might sign up for 3 classes or something like that.
Right. S- Okay, so are you guys the only two teachers, or do you also have other teachers there?
So my wife is
Oh, that's right. She's
home with
raising
those
kids.
kids.
Yeah.
That's another classroom, but I have other teachers, Daniel De Silva, Felicia Feldman, um, and Megan Ewell as well,
Hmm.
grad from the Florence Academy, and they're all very talented. I have a nice group of teachers here, and I've been fortunate to have some really great teachers as well in the past. I've had Manu Saluja and Dale Zinkowski. Dale's great.
Hmm.
Um, and so yeah, we have a nice group of artists, and I run it, but I usually just stay out of the other artist teachers' ways and just let them teach how they want to teach.
Wow, that's really interesting. So you say it's not really an atelier. Is that because you've got more the class format instead of this? Yeah. So it's
That's
more like
right.
sort of a hybrid between an atelier and a university as far as the way it
It's a small
functions.
pri- it's a small private art school that's kind of tailored to the realism category and beyond.
Hmm.
There's not really any like abstract anything going on, but a lot of people are into different kinds of image making and landscape painting and just a wide variety of things within that realism category. And the teachers that are there have kind of gone through atelier training. So for those that really need it and want it, they have those skills to pass on as well.
Hmm. That's great, man. Congrats. It's not easy to start your own place.
Well, Robert started it, but it's
Well, it's
it's
not
hard
easy
to
to
keep
maintain a
something
place.
going.
Yeah, it's not easy to maintain a place. Yeah.
Especially during the pandemic, and oh my goodness, that was rough in New York, to try to make that all happen, and that kind
Hmm.
of led to other online opportunities, which at first, I mean, it was such a drag, but I've really loved to learn how to teach online, and something I really enjoy actually. Some artists don't like teaching online, but I feel like there's certain things you can do online that are harder to do in person. So I've
Oh,
been doing
interesting. What is that?
I've been doing that ever since the pandemic, actually. So yeah, I have classes every Saturday online with Zoom, and morning is portrait class, and the afternoon's landscape. And what I often do is like I'll shoot a model or something, and then I'll kind of like style it out. So usually with I've always wanted as a teacher for students to see something as a painting, right? Like
Hmm.
sometimes you just look at that dead photo and maybe the exposure isn't right, or maybe there's always something wrong with the reference. It's never exactly what you want it to be. So, with an online class, I can kind of manipulate the reference to kind of do things that I think are artistically interesting. And I think it invites a little point of departure for people to where they're not just totally saddled with, hey, did you get that little hair there, like because there's a big delta between like a really good reference photo and a John Singer Sargent painting. Like
Hmm.
it's a pretty big mental exercise to bridge that gap. And so sometimes I'll style out an image to kind of show some point of style so it like invites that creative expression into the painting.
So you mean in real time in Photoshop, you work on the photo reference itself digitally, is what you're saying?
Yeah, I usually do it before class because,
Okay.
I'd rather be painting with everybody else in class. But yeah, usually it's some kind of Photoshop. I use digital painting and all kinds of different things. Whatever works.
Yeah, that's an interesting approach. I like that. So I'm gonna back way up to the beginning. How did you decide to become an artist? And I mean, as a child,
Hmm.
when did you decide that was your path?
I feel like I need to get on the couch here or something.
Yeah, man.
But but
I
yeah,
know
I
you
mean,
look.
really, it's almost like emotional when you kind of get to a certain age and you start looking back on, the things that kind of got you to where you are. And first and foremost, it's really my mother
Really?
who passed on a couple of years
I'm
ago. And
sorry.
it was really that was, there's kind of like life with your parents alive, and then after they passed, like it's a different chapter in your life. So I kind of passed one of those issues with her, but I used to draw with her as a kid. She was studying to be a graphic designer, like when they used markers and like
Mm-hmm.
orc, like letraset. If anybody
I
knows
don't
what
even
that.
know what any of that stuff is. I mean, I know what magic markers are, but orc and Electroset?
Yeah, well, they would do typeface. They would have like these printed out letters, and then you would kind of like almost like a scratch off ticket. You would kind of like adhere them onto your logo.
Really? No
Yeah,
joke. Okay.
really old school stuff. But she was studying how to do that in the age when computers were just coming up. And sometimes that's how it is in art school. I think, what is it? Dave Hickey said, sometimes art schools teach you how to make a Datsun when people want to drive a McLaren, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So like she was in a in an older phase where it was like, hey, we're working with markers and everything. And then when she got out, she was never able to really realize those dreams, but she always wanted it from me. And we used to come up with ideas together and draw all the time. And it was a really beautiful time in my family. And I credit her with that. And she also made a lot of sacrifices to send me to like summer camps. And there were a lot of nurturing people early in my art world. My high school art teacher, Jennifer Howdeshell, shout out. She really she wrote a letter of recommendation for me that like I mean, I was into like death metal, long hair. I was a little bit on the outskirt, I wasn't I was like goth or some whatever you would call it. And she wrote a letter of recommendation, and I was like, "Are you talking about me?"
Really? That's nice.
Like my parents read it and cried. And so like she really kind of like believed in me in her at a really young age. And that really helps out a lot when somebody really cares. They
Mm-hmm.
not may not have to have all the atelier training and all the knowledge and everything, but when somebody cares about you, tries to put you on a path, it's really meaningful. So I always try to keep that in mind. And they're really, my high school art teacher and my mother are really the ones that kind of got me on the path.
So did your mom, I kind of assume I know the answer to this, but did your mom see your potential or was she sort of living her dreams through you or both?
I think a little bit of both. I mean, I had some talent. Um, I won like an art contest or something at a young age, and she just saw some things and wanted to, she didn't really know how to raise a kid. She came from a really broken, rough family, and she was just trying to do her best, like, oh, maybe I should send him to art camp or something. And
Mm-hmm.
she just kind of just, as things developed, she always made um, some money and little sacrifices to make those things happen for me. And I think she just wanted to be able to raise a good family. But I also think that she wanted to like live a little bit of those dreams through me. And I was really happy to be able to kind of follow through on that through the years.
Yeah. Did she get to see any of your
Yeah,
successes, you know?
yeah, she saw the school. I wrote my first book a couple years ago. She saw that. She saw me go to Italy. And probably the most important thing though is, that family. And Rebecca's an amazing woman, and the kids that came from that was probably the thing she was most proud of.
Yeah, of course. So yeah, you haven't mentioned your father. Did she raise you by herself?
My dad's awesome too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a split family. So at a young age, probably like 9 years old, they split, and he went on an odyssey, and and uh,
Really?
one of those midlife crisis kind of situations. I'm at that age right now.
Yeah.
I feel what that feels like. But yeah, he went on his odyssey, and he's been a really encouraging force as well. And really helped me with a lot of putting the pieces back together afterwards and spiritually speaking. And, he's a really good man and remarried. And yeah, we're all very close now.
That's
Uh,
great.
but early the art path would be my dad's more of a sports guy.
Okay, gotcha,
So
gotcha. You said that you're at that age. I never did ask how old you were. When were you born?
1983,
83. Okay. So you're what,
42.
42? Yeah. Do you really feel that happening right now? That midlife crisis? Like, what am I doing with my life?
You do start to think about,
Yeah.
where everything leads at that time. You get right at that age with my mother passing, and just I think what 20s, you're sort of discovering, what your career might be, gaining experience, kind of seeing the world.
Mm-hmm.
30, you're kind of settling into something and really trying to work hard to kind of build something up. 40, you kind of take a little step back, and it seems like you're looking at, you can see, you know what it is, you can see the rest of your life.
Mm-hmm.
You can see where your choices are leading. You see a few people you love pass, and you think a little bit more about, where you're going in life. And I think also artistically speaking, because this turned into like an emotional conversation. Artistic,
Undrape, man. I'm undraping you.
uh, artistically speaking too, I mean, I think you start off with a lot of possibilities, and then you start kind of zeroing in on something. And I think you start to feel that. I mean, you feel more confident in your abilities, but you also kind of, things are crystallizing. And,
Mm-hmm.
and you can kind of see, like, is that exactly what I wanted? You know what I
Yep.
mean?
Yep.
Like, so I don't think we ever know exactly what we really want, but you start to feel what the result of a lot of your choices are, around 40.
Yeah. Well, it does pass because it's funny. You said that, and I remembered my early to mid 40s. I'm 50 now. I'll be 51 this year, and it's almost like I'd forgotten. But it was kind of a rough time. I remember because your 30s, for me, my 30s were so exciting. I was starting to see success. It was like, oh my gosh, I'm actually an artist. Things are happening. I also have a school. Um, and then you get to 40 and it was like kind of you really already said it, but it's like, okay, now what? Like every I've uh, I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. Now what do I do? I've still got like 50 years.
Yeah, you kind of need like a new hill to
I
climb as well.
know. Yeah, it's kind of rough, man. I got pretty down for a couple years. I'm like, dang, man, I don't know what to do for 50 more years. Like anyway, it's
And
wild. But it sort
and
of
like
fades away. I don't know why.
and like, a lot of good, like, one of my main goals in life. I mean, I don't know, it seems kind of small compared to some other people's goals, but like it was big for me at the time, was to make a living doing art,
Mhm.
to have a good family. And like, okay, like that's great. I feel like it's there.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
like I kind of need, and I'm not ungrateful about that. I'm so thankful for that every day. But I kind of, sometimes you need like a new goal, so that me and C were just talking about this, like moving goalposts is kind of a good thing,
Mhm.
because if you just arrive at the thing, what are we doing? So it's usually seen as like a pejorative to move the goalposts, but sometimes it's kind of necessary to kind of keep you motivated and focused and moving forward.
Well, it's one thing to move the goalpost for someone else, but that is kind of pejorative. But for yourself, you're right. It's healthy. You got to keep on growing, or you're just going to get stagnant.
It's true.
Yeah. This episode is brought to you in part by Rosemary Brushes. If you're one of my listeners who's a professional artist, you're already using Rosemary Brushes. But for the rest of you, come on, take your work a little more seriously. Stop buying the other brands. It's just not worth it. Every now and then you may get lucky and buy a good brush from another brand, but
Use the brand that professionals like myself are using. Go to rosemaryandco.com, link in the description or the show notes, and get yourself some quality brushes before your next painting.
Well, good luck with that, man. Good luck with that. So let's talk about your art.
Sure.
As I said, man, it's amazing. It's just extraordinary. And and as I was looking through it, it's obvious you're a great teacher too, just by some of these posts that you've got where you talk about the principles of painting and drawing. Um, and like I said earlier, it's your color is just amazing. Now, I got a question for you. You don't
Sure.
look like him at all, but I do see some influence of Stephen Assail. Am I wrong there?
Sure. I mean, I love all kinds of artists. Stephen Assail, definitely. I mean, some of those, like the one up to the left there,
Right
that's
here.
definitely got like a Stephen Assail lighting
That's
vibe.
probably what I'm seeing is that warm backlight that he loves
Yeah.
to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was something they always really taught at the New York Academy. They wanted to put people in extreme color situations, almost ugly ones. I mean, the cool thing about Stephen Assail is I think he goes into like extreme color situations, but he has an aesthetic.
Yeah.
So like one of the lights will be kind of maybe more neutral and one will be really saturated. They're not like super purple and super green, like he
Mm-hmm.
might get a little wild here and there, but I feel like, especially coming from like an atelier training where you're living in a brown world and everything's raw umber, I think it was kind of good to get that shock to the system. And even if you don't decide to go down that garish route, you have a spectrum that you can choose from. And I'm always waffling, like that one in the middle is a little bit more natural. It's got a couple of, chromatic hits, but there's also a lot of unity and little flickering bits of gray and I love light. The Florence Academy was so great at teaching you, the light effect and everything like that. So
Well, what do
you
you
know,
mean by that? What do you mean by you love light and they taught you the light effect? Could you describe that? Let's get a lesson from you.
well, I got a funny story. Okay.
Okay.
So, all right. You go into, there's all those pitfalls if somebody's just kind of self-trained that you fall into, which would be like reflected light, starting details too early. So reflected light would be a bright spot in the shadow that's exciting. And then you
Right,
basically
right, right here.
break the whole, of course,
I
you know
can't
that.
point at it, but right under here. Yeah.
Yeah, like the blue on that one right there, but like somebody would make it like white or
Right.
something. So, anyways, at the Florence Academy, they see everybody coming there, and there's like several things you keep hearing, and it would just be like darker, darker, squint down, darkness, and then like if you started to like kind of finish something, they'd be like, no. You gotta stay open. Find the gesture. Keep it vague. Search, 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 search. And between like making things dark and like not finishing them, you get to you do wander around and figure out some things. I mean, there's some habits you kind of got to break from that. But one of the things that, I kept painting the reflected light a little bright. And in my opinion now, I thought I was painting it like pretty close to nature because sometimes reflected light gets in there. I mean, I wasn't breaking the shadow. I
Yeah.
wasn't breaking the shadow principle, okay?
Right, right.
But I was painting that
You
way, and it
sound
was like,
really defensive. Like,
but
look,
I was
man, I didn't
painting.
screw it up that bad.
Well, I know, right? Like maybe if I went back in time, I'd be like, "Oh yeah, Steve, you messed up the reflected light." He was right. But anyways, I was painting what I thought was just a luminous shadow.
Okay.
Guy comes in and he says, that shadow's too light. There's too much reflected light. And he's like, look at it. And I'm looking at it. And he says, squint. And I'm looking at it. And I'm like, I still don't see it. And
You're squinting too much.
he looks at me and he says, squint harder. And I was like, oh, all right, okay, I'll make it darker now. So that's kind of a funny story about a teacher. Squint harder. It kind of felt like Cool Hand Luke or something.
That's hilarious. Once
You
your
know,
eyes are closed, everything is dark. That's how it works.
yeah, I'm gonna paint it like this, I promise. Well, really, the kind of the target for that was like more of a Baroque era thinking of like Ribera and Rembrandt. And I really loved Ribera at the time. So I really didn't have a heart, I didn't. So when you push the shadows that dark, what happens is that the form really becomes three-dimensional and really sculptural in
Right.
this like really Baroque way that even in some other ateliers when they kind of compress and it still looks like three-dimensional and beautiful, like a GCA kind of thing, they kind of compress the shadows. I just fell in love with like pushing that dark
Wait,
as
wait,
it's
wait.
going.
What do you mean by compress the shadows? What they're doing at Grand Central?
Well, I
I'm
don't
not
want to
sure I
say that.
understand that.
Okay, I don't want to just say sweepingly. Like
No, no, no.
whenever
I'm
you,
not saying that to call you out. I'm saying I genuinely don't understand the term. Like
oh,
I'm visualizing one of their drawings, and I'm not sure I understand what you're describing.
sure. And I just want to be careful too. It's fun to talk about these things,
Right.
but like you don't want to like sweepingly judge a school. There's so many amazing
Oh
people.
gosh, we all know that Grand Central's amazing. Yeah, get it.
I
I get
just
it.
want to
Yeah.
give that like disclaimer
Right.
because like when you're talking about these things, it could be misconstrued as like, oh, you're taking a shot or something.
Right.
No, what I'm saying is like so like my buddy Dale from the GCA, there would be a gray paper and like maybe he would keep the whole portrait values between like, 3 and 7, or
Oh,
maybe
oh, I see what you're saying.
even like 3 and 6, like or I mean, it's hard to do that, by the way, to make something look round and keep the value scale between 4 and 6. I mean, that's like an amazing feat. But for
Yeah.
me at the Florence Academy, it was kind of like, let's go 10 to 1,
Well, at
you
Grand
know.
Central, isn't part of it the medium though? I mean, aren't they more focused on graphite where you guys are more focused on at Florence, you're more charcoal based?
Well, I think about the ateliers as having like I was talking with Dan Graves about this one time when back then. I think the ateliers have like model artists that they're chasing. There's an aesthetic established with those places.
Mm-hmm.
And so then the teaching kind of follows suit with that. And I feel like I don't know. I mean, Grand Central's changed a lot too, like with Colleen Berry there and kind of different directions. But I feel like they're more in a 19th century kind of way, and in the 19th century, like more like almost like a Bouguereau mentality. I mean, I don't know if they would say Jacques-Louis David or something like that, but something like that, where it's like it's not so much about like this like hard dark shadow or some brilliant light. It's just more modest. It's like
Mm-hmm.
a more modest way of sculpting the form and really getting it to be like super dimensional in a conceptual way that kind of privileges more the middle range than it does like the big dynamic range.
Yeah, I always just assume that that's just because they only had one HB graphite pencil.
Baby, I mean,
I'm kidding,
somebody in
Avi.
there,
Like that's all
somebody
you're
in
allowed
there
to
would
use.
just, well, I mean, it's an amazing amount of restraint, and maybe
Mm-hmm.
somebody in that ecosystem would describe it differently, but just as an outside observer, that's kind of what I see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Their work is remarkable. So, but okay, so Florence Academy, you say they kept it open. I'm not. I'm trying to think if I thought I was more familiar with the work coming out of there, but maybe I'm not. Do they not window paint like they do at or window draw like they do at Grand Central? Is it not the same?
I mean, it's been a long time since I was there and things change, but when I was there, their artistic models were basically Velasquez, Rembrandt, and Sargent.
Oh,
You
so
know?
they worked the whole thing at once.
Yeah, it was more just like big vision, big effect, kind of like in some ways looser brushstrokes,
Oh, I didn't know that.
A lot
Okay.
of a lot of the like really great British portrait painters, I think, kind of I don't know exactly the lineage, but was it like Rupert Alexander? And they kind of have this like Sargent look, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of soft and um, um, what's her name? Bell. What's the last first name? Bell. Okay,
Francis Bell?
yeah, Francis Bell and like Rupert Atkinson
You mean
and
the contemporary Francis Bell?
yeah, yeah, that's right.
Okay, okay.
I feel like there must be some kind of lineage with
Hmm.
somebody like Rupert Alexander and a few painters like they
I
kind
thought
of branch.
Francis Bell went to Cecil Academy.
Yeah, well, it's all kind of floating around. I don't know, man.
I
I
could
feel
have
like
it
it's
wrong though.
all
I could have it wrong. She, by the way, just won the Draper Prize at the Portrait Society.
totally deserved it.
Oh yeah, it was
One of the
great.
best contemporary portrait painters out there. It's
She is
really
so good.
amazing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Cecil and Florence Academy were together. There were a few
Oh,
different splits that happened. First, it was Graves and Cecil, then they split. And then it was John Angel and Graves, and they split. And so then there's like those three main schools that are still there, and a few others that
oh,
sort
I
of
had
pop.
no idea there was all that connection. I thought it was just three independent schools from the beginning.
Well, it's funny because it felt like, it felt like you don't want to cross that side of the railroad tracks and go over there and check out that
He's a
school.
traitor.
It's like a warring high school thing. So like a few of us would go sneak over to Charles Cecil, and that guy gave the best lectures I've ever heard. He was so animated. He was a Rhodes Scholar. He was so animated, and it felt like the Phantom of the Opera. Like the lights would turn down. There's free wine for college students, so we've all drinking wine in the evening, listening to this brilliant man.
Wow.
And he just had this like funny way with his hands and his hair, and he just had like you collect all those little anecdotes from art history that are, I mean, they're written down in books, but like you kind of get them from other artists who've thought about it. And like he would bring up, what we're going to look at tonight is the best big toe in all of art history. And I'm like, have we decided what is the best big toe? And like he would wait. You'd just be waiting for the painting that had the best big toe. He was so good. And so we would go over there and just kind of sneak in there. Oh, we're just visiting Florence, checking this out, and
That's
check
crazy.
out the whole school. The whole school is great. I mean, it's fun to talk about Florence because like I just went back to Florence for it's been 20 years for me. And I went back with, Steve. And I went there and I just like I got off the train station. I just like cried. It was just like you see your life, midlife crisis, you see your
Mm-hmm.
life flash before your eye. Like that was me and Steve getting off of the train 20 years ago. And here we are. We're still doing it. We're doing all right. And that city is just magic. I mean, it's really a magical city, and all the little lore that exists and different stories that, like really nobody wants to talk about it because it could be, like maybe you say the wrong thing, this is being recorded for YouTube and everything, but there's just a lot of mystique. There's a lot of beautiful stories. There's a lot of history there with all of those ateliers and that movement. I mean, those guys really kind of started up a whole movement that we're all benefiting from. And it's really, they used to talk about it a long time ago, how, maybe things would change in the art world, or, I mean, I don't know, the art world, but just artistically speaking, there's just so much talent and knowledge available out there now. And all three of them have contributed to that.
Yeah, it is pretty remarkable. It's a good time to be alive.
Yeah.
It really is. There's so much out there right now, both in brick and mortar and online.
Yeah.
So that's really cool that you and Stephen Bowman have been friends since, were you children when you became friends?
No, no, no. We were like the odd couple. So at art school,
Oh, you met
he,
at art school. That's right. You did say that.
yeah.
Okay. But that's great that you both found success. I mean, how about that?
Yeah, well, we've really been there for each other, and just support. It's something when you have a friendship for that long, you look past, on your life, and it's nice when, somebody's super talented in your field, and there's no friction, like it's sometimes hard when somebody else has success, or you're having success and they're not, or whatever it is. And it's really nice when egos don't get in the way, and you can just be close and supportive of your friends. That's been a lesson for me in art. Like when um, at the New York Academy, there was like some fellowship thing, and like you don't get selected for a thing, and then you feel bad, and it's really nice when you can rise above that and really support your friends, and they support you, and you have like a good relationship over time. It's not always the
Hmm.
case.
No, that's a great thing. You're really fortunate.
Yeah.
That's awesome. All right, so let's talk again about your art a little bit. Tell me a little bit about your process. Well, one specific question is, do you have a large palette? I ask this a lot. I'm always curious about this. Are you more limited palette or do you have a more expansive palette?
There's usually like 10 to 12 colors on there.
So sort of mid
Yeah,
average palette.
nothing too crazy, but yeah, not too limited. Occasionally I bust out the neon colors at the end though. Like they're kind
Neon
of good.
colors? Like what? What neon colors?
Well, they're good for kind of glazing.
Do you mean
So,
literally you have neon colors? Literally? Or are you
yeah,
just saying bright?
yeah,
I've
yeah,
never even
neon.
heard of any neon colors.
Yeah, well, they don't have any body to them. They're really kind of like Terra Vert or something has like no body to it.
Oh, you would
Um,
call Terra Verde a neon color.
Well, no, 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 no. But
Oh,
what I'm
oh,
saying is like the way that that pigment handles, or like a really thin lead white, is
yeah.
very vaporous. It doesn't really cover anything. It's not good for covering anything.
Okay.
So I have some neon colors by Holbein. There's also
Really? And they're
Nap-
transparent so you can glaze with them?
very transparent.
Hmm.
And kind of the thing, I like color, and when you get used to looking at images on screens, I mean, they're just lies, and there's certain colors we're used to seeing on a screen that then when you go into real life, it just feels like you can't get them. And
Mm-hmm.
what I often try to do, I mean, I don't want to paint everything in neon, but what I often do is like, say you have like a really high quality CAD red,
Mm-hmm.
and you paint it with there, and there's an end to the chroma spectrum, but like on a Munsell color chart it keeps going on a screen, and so the neon colors kind of help you access that level of chroma that's out of the gamut of cadmium color.
Do you remember the names of some of these colors? Because I love color, man, and I've never heard of any neon colors. I've never used whole. So you said Holbein. Actually, I have used Holbein. I would
Yeah, so Holbein makes some, I was looking for a long time. I could probably research it. I've never used the first set that I haven't used up the first set that I got because they're mostly glazing, but Gapka makes some that are, I think they're just true oil, but Holbeins are water mixable, so I'm always a little
Oh.
dicey. I'm always a little dicey with the water mixable stuff, but as a glaze at the end, the Holbein has like this
Wait, you
duo.
put water mixable paint over oil?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, it's still
You
linseed
sounded
oil.
it's water mixable, but it's got a linseed oil base.
Yeah, they kind of modify the linseed oil for that, like they do
Huh.
something funny with it. And, as a glaze, whatever. Like it already has like a foundation of color there. And
Okay.
then, um, I'm, I don't know. I know that, I bet if George O'Hanlon got on here, he'd be like, what are you telling these people, you
Yeah.
jerk? You
Well,
know,
you're not. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll work. I don't know. I would have thought you couldn't do that, but it's nothing. You haven't seen anything scrape off yet.
No, and I don't use water. Like I don't use water when
Right.
those water mixables, you're supposed to be able to just use linseed oil and other mediums with it.
Oh, you are? Okay. Well, then
Yeah,
it's probably not a problem. Yeah, I've
yeah.
never tried them before.
So like the painting of my daughter with the Ferris wheel, and then the ones with the orange hair.
Wait.
Those
Are they on here?
keep going. Yeah, keep going. Uh,
Man, these
keep
are
going.
amazing, dude.
Keep going.
How come these aren't on your Instagram?
They are. They're just buried. That one's got neon in it for sure.
That's your daughter?
No, no, keep going.
Oh, it's like I
Uh,
thought your kid was 12.
one more. I think it's one more right
Oh,
there.
cute.
That one's got like some big time neon colors on the back too.
Yeah, yeah, I see that. Wow.
Like they
That's
don't even photograph.
amazing.
They don't even photograph true. It's like a different world in person.
Really.
It's hard to photograph actually because the chroma of the image, like I don't know, the camera freaks out with it or something.
Isn't that interesting? Because you're trying to achieve what you see on a screen that seems impossible to achieve by adding fluorescent colors. But then when you then photograph it digitally, you can't achieve that.
Yeah.
It seems
Uh,
like it should be easy to reverse it, but
yeah.
that's
I don't know.
interesting.
What you know how it is when you photograph paintings. Like
Yeah.
it takes a lot to really get like a true representation of what's there.
Yeah, the problem is too, it's like the sensor does it either wants a neutral or it wants crazy bright. And if you have neutral and crazy chromatic in the same painting, the camera doesn't like it.
Yeah, and I mean, I get a lot of the from lifers that work from life because like you don't have to deal with this, but you know, I've had to figure out other ways to calibrate things out,
Yeah.
you know, and figure that out.
Yeah. And what was the other one you mentioned?
Oh, the one with the orange hair.
Oh,
I
the
mean,
one
there's
we already looked at. Yeah.
yeah, that like that up close is kind of cool. See all those neons and stuff.
Yeah, that's very thin. What is that on? Was that on a panel?
Yeah, that's on a
It's
panel.
text that okay. Yeah, dang, that's really thin. So it's kind of just a wash.
Yeah. And then yeah, if you scroll down to 49, there's kind of like a detail, like an abstract detail in one of the paintings that I think has got some cool neon effects to it.
Jeez, there's a bunch of stuff here. It's crazy.
Yeah, like that's kind of like a abstract sleeve. And
Wow.
I don't know, like in person, like the neons are really kind of like they're pretty punched up there.
So, but you can only get them in the water mixable. Is that what you're saying?
I think Gapka makes original oils, but I was,
Gapka? Never even heard of.
yeah,
I've
I
never
don't
heard of
know.
that.
That's what I think that's what Colleen Berry uses is these Gapka neon. I've never tried it because I've just never finished the original set that I got. I had this wacky idea. I'm like, I'm digitally painting and I'm getting these colors that like I can't get on oil paint. I'm frustrated. I'm like, neon colors. That's it. That's
Mm-hmm.
out of the gamut range. That's what Munsell has. So like I gotta figure it out.
Yeah. Gapka. Oh, well, I guess I don't have to remember that. It was recorded, so we're good. Yeah, man. Just so what about God, I don't even know what to ask. These are so Are you more of a direct painter or indirect painter? Because I noticed on some of yours that you did a drawing, but I assume that was some sort of for some sort of teaching.
Yeah, well,
Um,
so when I teach, you know, like I don't know, like I'm always kind of mixing up my technique for teaching too. So for a while we did a lot of under drawings. Like it's hard to get drawing skills and then translate that to painting. So a lot of these have like a really finished under drawing. And
yeah.
then a couple of them we kind of did like more of like an abstract alla prima start.
Yeah, like right here. You painted right on this. You painted
So
right on
that's
the drawing.
yeah, that's the underdrawing method, and that really works. You know, there's pitfalls to that. Sometimes in that like ebauche glazing transition phase, people struggle with that because you know, they don't know how to maybe use the color strong enough to transition. You know, like when you put on that ebauche or that glaze pass, you're trying to use
The
colors.
ébauche is the just the sort of muddy glaze on top.
Yeah, it's kind of like I always I never got great instruction on how to transition from an underpainting to like a finished painting. It just felt like, oh, put on 1,000 glazes and that's the answer.
Mm-hmm.
Like I don't know, and it made me really sad when I taught it because like when somebody went from the underpainting to the overpainting, they would like go through this like really ugly phase where I'm like, what am I doing? I'm just want to be like Sergeant. Forget all this underpainting business. So I kind of try to develop this idea where you could I call it more like an embauche phase, like a Bouguereau, where it's basically a watercolor version, not literal watercolor, but you're
Right.
using oil paint like watercolor so that it's transparent and you can still see the drawing underneath. So you're kind of you already kind of have the answers to the test, so to speak. And then that transitional embauche phase then allows you to just kind of paint with confidence and not really have to think about the drawing, really kind of separating your problems.
Okay. So the first time I heard the term ébauche is who was it? It was God,
Maybe
what's
maybe Joshua Lorak.
yeah. No, not Joshua LaRock. I can't remember anyway. But I'll it'll come to me. But it was the artist. What they did was just after the first layer, which was direct painting, they would put Van Dyke Brown, just a thin wash of Van Dyke Brown over it, and he called that ébauche. And then he would paint direct on top of that again, and that was it. It was
Yeah.
Colleen Barry's husband. Why am I drawing a blank?
Oh, Will St.
Will
John.
St. John. Thank you. Yeah, it was him. Um, And so what does ébauche literally mean? Is it just that watercolor version, that glazy underpainting?
I think it's better to like think about Bouguereau's technique as an ébauche technique. There's not a brown underpainting in a Bouguereau, and it kind of
I don't know
base.
Bouguereau's technique.
Well, I'm not like an expert either, but I mean, like
No, but
I've
how do
thought
you?
about it a bit.
Okay, so what do you? I mean, so describe it. What you're talking about, because I'm not familiar at all with Bouguereau's technique.
I mean, and they probably have alternate versions through the years, but I mean, basically, there's probably like a transfer drawing that has like an outline or like some kind of it's probably not like built up and shaded or anything, but there's like a drawing, the
Yeah,
drawing
yeah.
something. He probably drew it on paper and transferred it, and then it's sealed, and then basically, well, really, the ébauche technique, you can see it in like unfinished Jacques Louis David paintings, and
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of like this little scrubby color wash that's like the first layer to kill the white and get close to the color, and then he goes in on a second pass and paints it more opaquely. But there's a big gap between like a white canvas and like final
Okay.
values. So the ébauche is kind of like a scrubby primer layer, but in my mind, it's the right color everywhere. It's not like an arbitrary brown. It's like if the background's gray, it's a gray eboche there.
Okay.
If
Okay.
the hair is dark brown, there's a dark brown eboche. If it's pink in here, there's a pink eboche. And so it's like a primer, scrubby watercolor layer over the drawing. And then the second pass, it gets like finished, or maybe there's a third, fourth, and fifth, but that's kind of the buildup. And you see it in a lot of Bouguereau head studies, and you can also see it very clearly in a lot of unfinished Jacques Louis David paintings.
Hmm. Okay. Well, that's helpful because I just assumed it was just getting your painting dirty, which is what it, you know, what it looked like to me. Huh.
No, yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Okay. No, that's great. Thanks for that. Thanks for that information. That's great. All right, let's go back to that file here.
Yeah, so that one's more the abstract a la prima start. So that over on the left, that was like a 1 day thing where I was trying to get people to not paint eyes or nostrils or details, but kind of embrace paint and abstraction and value and generally good drawing, but then like kind of save the details for later.
Which approach do you do when you're doing your own work?
I kind of do a little
You
bit
do
of
it
everything.
all. Okay.
I don't know. I kind of keep changing. That's kind of part of the thing that makes it fun for me, I think.
Man, look at
These are
that.
these are digital. That's
So
digital.
that's the colors you're after when you get those fluorescents, huh?
Yeah, right. Kind of.
Jeez. That's a beautiful combination of that yellow and purple. It just sort of vibrates.
No, thank you.
Man, I love that stuff. And
I did
down in
a
here, you got the turquoise and the yellow and the pink.
Yeah. I like to think
Mm,
of the highlights kind of like Pink Floyd, Dark Side of the Moon. There's like everything in there.
yeah, that's amazing. But you're also doing it in the halftones and darks. I mean, you've got some really dynamic color choices in here.
Yeah, so I call that color diversity, and whether the reference has it or not, like I have different systems that I use when I'm teaching and painting to kind of get that even when the reference isn't there, so that it makes sense to people studying with me and all that.
Yeah. So I'm after the same thing in my work. I call it optical mixing.
All right.
Yeah, because the idea is in my mind, the idea is to when you step back, it all sort of mixes in your eye to flesh color. But then you look up close at it, and it's just this dynamic, abstract pattern of color. I just have to take a minute to thank each one of my generous patrons for your part in keeping this podcast going. I could not continue to do it without you, so thank you so much. If you're not a patron yet, but you love the show and you listen regularly, please consider becoming a patron. It's really easy to do and it doesn't have to break the bank. Just head over to theundrapedartist.com and click on the link Be My Patron on Podbean. And then choose a monthly donation amount that fits your budget. It's that simple.
Yeah, there's another one of him that I think is like one of my favorites. You keep scrolling at some point.
Okay.
But
Oh, that's digital. Okay.
yeah,
That's
digital.
gorgeous, man. Digital. I've never done digital before. Can you believe that?
This one, I really like some of the brush strokes on this one and some of the color on that one. And the
That's
edges,
wild.
the edges are pretty weird on that one. Like so digital painting is, in the more traditional world, it's a little controversial because people want a real thing and it's kind of a new thing and
Hmm.
maybe you can cheat doing it or something. But to me, it's really a way to explore a different way of thinking about using mark making
Hmm.
because like the brushes and the options are just really, really wide open and they're not steeped in tradition. So like it's kind of like an anything goes
Hmm.
kind of thing. And that's really exciting for me after kind of coming from a traditional standpoint to really kind of like explore like this whole other medium that kind of got my brain thinking in new pathways.
Yeah,
So it's
that's great. Plus, it's got to be kind of nice just to be able to stick the thing on your lap and just go to town, not get all your stuff out.
yeah, another thing, I felt like after training from life, and this might be a controversial statement here, but training from life, if you're in a classroom and you're like 15 feet away from somebody's face,
Hmm.
what do you know about features? You don't really know what they look like. It's like a far distant land. And I mean, properly speaking, when you do it from life, you ought to be a lot closer than that so you can see it. But
Hmm.
doing digital painting that way really kind of like helped me study features on a micro level and really kind of understand some of the unique qualities that make a nose or a mouth and really kind of take it to the nth level. You can just keep zooming in forever. And it kind of just helped me like climb that mountain and just, okay, all right, I've done this. I know, what I could do here, or, it was really kind of freeing, rather than maybe leaving it too vague or something like that.
My struggle is with digital, and this isn't a critique of it. I think it's a great tool, but God, when you do something this beautiful, then what? It's
Yeah.
just digital. Like you can't hang it on your wall. I guess you could print it.
It's not the same though.
I know. Do you ever feel like, oh man, I wish I'd painted that?
I mean, yeah, there's probably a lot of things to say there. I mean, everybody thought NFT was going to be I mean, now that's just like a big joke, right?
Yeah.
Um, that what's the guy's name? Um, Beeple. Beeple went
Yeah.
on Joe Rogan and presented like a digital artwork and it looked really cool. Like if you were a digital artist and you wanted to like sell a thing, the way that Beeple presented his digital work to Joe, I thought was like, wow. It was like opening an Apple product. Like you open this thing and there was a glowing screen and that felt like, oh, that could be real. But that I'm obviously we're kind of departing from
Right, right.
what I use digital artwork for. Um, I kind of thought I just kind of did it on a whim, really. And then I started to really like what it did for me as a painter. It kind of gave me like a new thing to chase in
Mm-hmm.
my oil paintings and just and some things that I thought were not possible in oil paint, or like maybe I just was kind of stuck in my own way. I felt like I was able to kind of break through and maybe think about edges differently, color, layering differently. And so to me, it was more an explorative process. And I think a lot of people would like to understand how to draw digitally because it also helps, if you know those digital drawing tools, then you can also like design more ambitious work and paint into it. Like I know like David Dibble does that, and
Yeah.
that guy's amazing. I love what he does with like kind of like surrounding his reference material with the right color mood, with the right pathway, and the language of really being able to own your compositions that way. That was also another part of, getting good at digital painting.
Hmm. Yeah, I imagine it's sort of freeing too, because if you do wild things, you know you can just reverse it pretty easily. So it makes experimenting probably a lot less
Yeah,
scary.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, because I mean, there's a big space between your reference material and maybe what you'd like your painting to look like. And when you can hit Command Z, you might feel free enough to take those risks.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas on a painting, it's like, oh, I don't know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, you got this great portrait and you want to put this bold blue mark down the side, and you're like, oh, I don't know, that's pretty risky. But here, it's just, yeah, that's brilliant. Maybe I should start implementing that. That's
Yeah, look at
great.
that edge. I love that edge.
Right
That
here.
edge makes me so, like, I'm like, what is that tiny? That's the edge of his hair in one of the portraits, and I'm like, what is that? How did I make
God,
that?
artists are, I mean this in an endearing way. Artists are such dorks, man. Why do we get so excited about stuff like this? But I'm with you 100%. I'm like, God, look at that swirly, juicy wonderfulness.
Well, part
It's
of me
so
thinks it's
great.
halfway corny, like part of me thinks it's like a trapper keeper from the 80s. But like I also think, wow, that's really interesting.
It's
Like
so great.
I wouldn't arrive at that with like raw umber or like a filbert brush or something.
Have you ever taken an edge like this though and tried to create it?
Well, yeah.
Have you been successful?
Well, so this is the thing. When I look at that edge, I think, wow, that's really interesting just on a raw level. And I think, man, I could never do that in reality. And then, like you slowly kind of start to cobble it together. I mean, maybe it doesn't look quite
You're not
like
getting
that.
exactly the same thing without doing a portrait of it, right? But
Yeah, yeah. I mean, every medium has its strengths, and I think it's good to allow that medium to speak and not try to crush it into something else. But as an inspirational edge that would make me paint an oil painting differently.
that reminds me of when I said you're not going to do a portrait of an edge. I remember years ago seeing a student that really admired fetching. And that just energetic, sort of unpredictable texture and line work in a fetching that just makes it so freaking amazing. Um, well, this student admired fetching, so what she did was she started doing fetching copies, but the way she do them was sharpen her pencil up to like just minuscule, tiniest little sharp point, and then she would literally render all the gestural qualities, like just getting every last little thing. And I was like, I think you're missing the point, right? You got to
Uh,
kind of figure out how he does that without literally rendering his gestural mark, right?
yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah. So with something like this, man, how would you do that? It would not be the same.
Well, so yeah, like the way that's freed me up because we're talking about a lot of weird little things here is I think Ansel Adams said the negative is the score and the print is the performance.
Hmm.
meaning that every work of art is a performance that deviates slightly from the reference. And
Hmm.
that allows me, like when I'm influenced by like something cool and weird, like I'm gonna translate it. I'm gonna be influenced by it, but it's not gonna be a one-to-one because I don't have an interest in that, especially if I've done this digitally. Why would I want to make the same exact very thing? Whereas maybe like finding a weird brushstroke that would describe that same quality broadly rather than like rendering it out with like a little teeny tiny brush is more interesting to me, like kind of like what you're saying.
Yeah. No, I totally agree with that. Yeah, these are wild, man. Do you have details of your oil paintings? Like details like that small?
Oh, I have one of Avi, the one that was at the New Salem Museum. If you keep going up, it's like the sunflower one. And you could see some digital influence. Yeah, it's more towards the top.
Okay. Let's see.
It's like enough. Yeah, keep going. I gave you a lot of images.
Yeah, you did. These are
There it is, right there, right there. Yeah.
this one?
Yeah, but one down. Oh, yeah, there you go.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
So you
It,
could see some digital influence in like how that's rendering. I mean, we were talking a little bit about Odd Nerdrum and like when you look at the surface of his paintings, like I'm thinking about that and the way that that skin is, and sometimes it's like scratched and clawed and little tiny changes in there. I'm fascinated about like rendering something that way that is kind of a little more gritty and not like smooth. I've seen
mm-hmm.
some of your paintings up close that are like that too. It's like some of those details. I really love the rendering of something in that kind of way, and you can see the digital influence in a painting like that, I think.
Yeah, this could be a painting all by itself.
Yeah, I like that one a lot.
Yeah, no kidding, man. That is just great. The full one is gorgeous too, but this one could just by itself. I freaking love when realism and abstraction come together like this. That's some of my favorite work. I just interviewed Daniel Seagrove. Do you know him? His
I
work?
don't. No, I
Yeah,
don't.
he I don't know when you're going to come up on the I think you'll probably be this coming week. So he would be the episode right before yours. So as we're speaking now, it just went up on Monday.
Oh, okay.
But he's 34 years old. He lives in San Francisco and he does this great combination of realism and abstraction that's just pretty next level. Yeah, you should check it out. But it's very different than yours. Yours is also next level, but you have a completely different way of doing it, which is so interesting, man. There's like no limit to the amount of diversity in painting. It's wild. So what are some of your inspirations? How do you feel like you landed here?
Well, in some of the more thoughtful work I make, it's kind of like an idea collage where you kind of start with a certain idea and then it kind of changes along the way and you kind of add other motifs to it. And, this painting sort of started out as like one person against the crowd,
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of beautiful themes of one person against the crowd. And then, I think my mother passed around this time, and then it kind of became about more like connecting with your ancestors who've sort of moved on
Hmm.
and kind of one foot in the real world and one foot with the new frontier that I have yet to go to.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of this sort of like book of life here and also just connecting with people that have formed and sacrificed for you and that you're the benefit of that person. And so like this painting's a little bit of a homage of your ancestors that have struggled to get to a certain place that now you enjoy. But it's just that connection with your ancestry and kind of enjoying the current state of where we're at. It's really kind of a self-portrait in a way. So
Mm-hmm.
so like I'm not commenting on somebody else's experience as much, but it was just more about that. And also
Mm-hmm.
the painting of my daughter Evie as well. It's sort of
The
you
one
know,
at the Ferris wheel.
yeah, that was something that was sort of the same kind of thing where I'm kind of connecting with a theme of a portrait of a person, kind of connecting with I don't know. It sounds cheesy, but like time and space.
Yeah.
Like I love a story, but I also feel like it's nice when there's like a poetry and thinking about something larger than what is immediately photographable.
Mm-hmm.
So like the one of my daughters really kind
Where
of
is that one? I want to pull that up while you're talking about it.
sure it's probably a little higher.
Okay.
Right there.
There's
In the
so
middle.
many right here. All right. I'm sorry. You were just going to comment on it. I hope I didn't make you
Yeah.
lose your thought.
No, no, no. No, I mean this painting's really about it's about me. It's about Evie. It's about my mother. And I love this like circle motif, like I love the circle. It's sort of like this symbol of eternity. And I always love like shape language and rhyming things. And it feels like those bubbles are thoughts and dreams and the bokeh from the background and everything. And just kind of I don't think anybody else would really know that, but like when you paint something for yourself, it can take on a whole other meaning that is really deep to you, and maybe nobody else gets it. And um, there's a lot with this where it's like Evie kind of connecting with me taking the photo, but also with sort of thoughts and dreams and bubbles that kind of float out and pop and go off into the ether, and how
Hmm.
all of our lives are kind of like that. So like it was just a special moment to paint something about connecting with generations. So like some of the I mean I don't want to get too flowery about it and say like oh I'm so some deep painter or something. But I mean, these two paintings were more about connecting with generations than they are about um, a singular idea. If that
Mm-hmm.
makes any
Mm-hmm.
sense.
It does. Did you? I'm assuming you kept this painting.
Yeah, it's in my studio. Somebody wanted to buy it the other day. I almost sold it.
Oh man, I would love to own that painting. That's amazing. So the bokeh, this out of focus area,
Mhm.
w- was that what originally inspired the bubbles? Because it's like I've seen people paint bokeh, and then it just looks like a painted photograph, and I'm just
Mm.
like, eh. But you turned bokeh into part of a narrative in a way. It's like not bokeh. I didn't even realize it was bokeh. I at first, and then you said that I'm like, oh yeah, of course it is. It almost looks like the bubbles just kind of come because they start to sort of spread out here, and then they're closer up front. And did the bokeh inspire the bubbles, or did the bubbles inspire the bokeh, or neither?
Well, that's why I call these things idea collages because when you start off with something, it looks silly.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
usually when you start off with a great idea, it's really bad, and then like you kind of keep adding to it, and
Mm-hmm.
something that's meaningful usually takes time and layers. But the main idea here too is like shape language, which I think a lot of illustrators and people that work in the concept art world really understand, where you find a shape and you repeat it, and if
Mm-hmm.
that can also kind of connect to different objects and different meanings, like that's good because there's like a visual rhyme to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's not just a shape. I mean, in this case, it's actual things. And so there's this organic rhyme to it all, and that can be really cool. So
Yeah.
yeah, shape language and repetition of that, if you have time, is like a really wonderful compositional device. And I this is from the San Rocco Fair. There's like a fair around the corner, and we went there not to get too sad, but we were there a little while after my mom, and And I just brought like this fancy new lens that I bought. I'm really into photography, and I had like the 1.4 aperture and the low light and all this like carnival stuff. And I took some photographs, and it was really cool. Like who doesn't like bokeh? Like bokeh's cool, but like yeah, you get that point of like when you go to paint it, it can just look like an homage to photography. So
Mm-hmm.
I thought the idea of like composing other circular elements in there would kind of make it less about the bokeh and a little more about the design.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Not to mention you made the Ferris wheel sharp, so it sort of breaks that photographic principle. I mean, it's not getting progressively less focused. It's like her in focus, then the bokeh, then the Ferris wheel, you know, that's actually sharp again. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's cool, man. That's really cool. All right, so let's see. Just want to cruise through here and see what jumps out at me. Whoa, these are different. What is this?
Yeah, so I kind of put in, like a little bit of my journey, and I kind of was really into these like story paintings when I came out of the New York Academy, kind of like story collages,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of began some of my like digital arrangement of things.
Uh,
And so these were kind of like wonky, weird. I mean, coming from an atelier and like doing like weird little story things like this, um, it I was really experimenting with color and with like these kind of funny looking stories, and I just wanted to include them because that I
yeah,
feel
that
like
is
this is
cool.
this is currently influencing my work, but it's not, like what I loved about making these where you could really tell a story, but then I really wanted to like paint portraits. So like now they're like portrait stories, but these were like some early works where I was experimenting with collaging and trying to
Hmm.
get after something maybe a little deeper than just a head study or something like that.
Yeah, I appreciate this that you're showing your reference and stuff. Man, they are. Quite remarkable how insufficient and incomplete your reference is compared to what you came up with.
Oh, this was a great little New York experiment. I was so tired of academia in New York, and you
Hmm.
would always meet these like strange characters in the streets of New York and IKEA bags and everything. And I love this sort of like intellectual discussion of his poetry or something.
That's great. That's great. Well, oh man, this is cool. Egon Schiele influence there.
Yeah, so this one kind of started off.
Whoops,
Um,
bouncing around. Sorry. Okay, go
this
ahead.
image, yeah, this image started off as like a class experiment in just kind of having like a compositional motif, doing a photo shoot, and just kind of meditating on that and kind of wandering around. So you see this really like rough, raw thing here and how it's kind of evolved. And I thought it'd be fun to kind
Hmm.
of show reference material. It might be like awkward and weird, but this was something I did in one of my online classes when we were like really designing artwork. And it's been a while since I did that, but I thought it was like a cool thing to take a motif and riff on it and kind of make it your own and have it evolve, and so that you're maybe not coming up with having to come up with something whole cloth.
Yeah. Yeah, that's smart. Did you actually paint it?
Yeah, so that's the one we were looking at with Abby with the sunflowers.
What? That's the one? No way.
Yeah,
Oh,
so we tried out like a different thing here, and then like then I
oh
did
man, it evolved a
that,
lot.
and then I like added on a piece to the left later.
Okay, now we got to go back to the sunflowers. That's this one here.
Yeah, that one.
What? Never would have seen the Chile influence. Holy cow.
Yeah, so I thought that was kind of cool, and I do some things like that where you kind of like find an arrangement that you really like, and you just like really keep tweaking it and changing it.
That's great. Man, I'm learning some good stuff today. This is good, man.
There's also something in there that I think is really cool. And like for people like who really want to do storytelling, look at, yeah, go to that first Frederick Church.
Frederick Church right here.
No, top slide. Oh, yeah, with the flag right there.
Sorry, I'm slow. I don't see it.
Oh, it's right there at the top, right below yeah, one below.
Oh, this. Oh, I thought you said top.
Okay.
Okay. I was looking at the
Okay.
top. I'm like, that.
I like to use this image as
Okay.
like, hey, ideas can start out cheesy. They can start out really bad. Like I love Frederick Church.
Yeah.
And like he probably had this vision. What if during the Civil War I painted the American flag in the sky and you know
Oh, yeah, that's what that is.
and you're like, wow, that's so
I didn't even catch that.
kitschy and bad and weird. I mean, all
It
right.
is pretty kitschy, huh?
You know, like maybe that's like coming in hardline judgment on one of the greatest painters that ever lived. But I think that that's like a really kitschy, weird thing. Maybe you would see it on a bumper sticker or something like that. But then, like, he takes that idea and refines it. So if you go to the next couple of slides, like, it just shows that, like, making art is a process. And now he's sort of subliminated the fact that there's that flag in the sky and it becomes something like more poetic and interesting. And then you go to the last one, and then we have like a nice masterpiece where he kind of brings it back to the original idea. Maybe
Really?
in the
Is this
middle
the
one,
actual evolution for him?
yeah.
You're not just reading into it? These are
Oh, I don't know if he wrote down anything, but I see it. I mean, like,
okay.
look at that flag in the sky.
No, I see it. This one is brilliant, man.
And he painted it during the Civil War. And so, like, he's commenting on something like really deep and profound, but like it started off bad.
Wow. Yeah, this is brilliant. Yeah, dang, that's it. The difference is so dramatic. Holy cow. How did you discover this?
Well, I used to teach landscape painting in the city, and I always liked the Hudson River School. So I kind of, used to really study church and some of his studies. And I came across this, and I was like, what is this thing?
So you came across this, you didn't come across all three at the same time though, right?
No, but I did eventually. I think I might have seen it in a book or something, but
Okay.
they're all named kind of like the same thing from the same era. It's
I just
about the Civil War.
okay. I just
And
imagine when you discovered it, you were like, what the heck?
well, I feel like there's a lot of paintings like that. And I feel like as artists, we have a tough job to make something like really well painted
Yeah,
and
you
tell a
think?
story. Yeah, like what we would like sadomasochists
I
here or
know.
something. Like, so to tell a story, like, I guess I wanted to put that out there because I think if you're trying to tell a story, when you start off, don't judge your ideas and think that they're stupid. They
Hmm.
need refinement and application. And I need to tell myself that because some of my best ideas are raw and you get all the technical
Mm,
information and all the other things that you acquire with your skills. And if you kind of miss that profound, genuine thing that you're interested in, it's kind of a little sad. So I love that like we can see Frederick Church sort of naked here, undraped, where we
yeah,
we we
man.
see this like terrible flag painting and how profound he makes that painting is just really special.
Yeah, this is so, I'm just going to say it. This is so bad.
It looks worse next to the finished one,
And then
right?
this is so brilliant.
Yeah.
So you genuinely believe this was more like a concept study and then it just evolved from here. And then
Yeah.
this is your finished piece.
Yeah, so that's why I kind of showed my concept studies and
Yeah.
like
It makes a
rough
lot of
design.
sense because the same guy that painted this at that quality could only have been painting this as a study. There's no way he could have perceived this as a finished painting. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but God, look at the difference in quality. It's mind blowing.
Well, I really, when I've thought about this, like just as an idea, like for me, when I'm making a story painting, it's going to start off bad.
Yeah, they all
And
start off bad. Yeah.
and when I look at that, I almost love the first sketch as much because it's like a raw idea, and he was bold enough to like, hey, you know what? We're gonna give this a try, and it's still out there. Like, I mean, of course, I love the last one the best, but when I look at that first one, it's like a visual mental cue for me. That's like this is the way.
Right.
It's okay to be bad.
But what you love about it, I think, because I agree with you if this is the case, is this wonderful window into the soul of an artist, but not necessarily because it's his best work. There's something so wonderful about and so great about seeing how an artist thinks. That's why there's studies. To an artist, a study is almost as good as a finished painting.
Is it just me or the rest of you guys also get weirdly excited when you order new paint? Because I don't know about you, but when I get paint in the mail, it feels like Santa just dropped my Christmas presents off at my doorstep. With Vasari paint, my paint of choice and the podcast sponsor, it's even more exciting. And let me show you why. Because when Vasari shows up, it comes in this incredible box where each tube lays in this little compartment perfectly formed around the tube in this nice soft foam. And it's surrounded by velvet, red velvet. Now you got to ask yourself, if a paint comes so carefully protected and surrounded by red velvet, you got to wonder if this paint is worthy of royalty. It is. Vasari is. So if you haven't tried Vasari, you're seriously missing out. And the thing about Vasari, it's not only the best paint out there, it's also made by an incredible company that's been around for 30 years and knows its customer by name. Do yourself a favor, go to vasaricolors.com and order yourself some for your next painting.
Yeah. Well, it's the thought, like the raw thought. I mean, I've even looked at like Michelangelo's drawings for The Last Judgment are like way cooler than the final product.
Yeah. But most people, like a lay person, isn't going to see it that way because at least maybe they will. But to us as artists, I don't know. I just want to know the artist. Like I want to get in their soul. I want to understand how they think. And so to own one of their studies or to look at one of their studies is always inspirational.
Well, it's a real talking point. You see a point of comparison.
Yeah.
And like people love to like add their little, oh, well, I kind of like the stripes in this one. You know what I mean? Like it tells it obviously there is the narrative of this painting, the final product, but then there's this technical narrative, kind of like what Vincent Desiderio talks about, that like this whole project, the whole technical aspect of how this is made kind of speaks its own story. And I think that people can get fascinated with that, even if they don't understand exactly what it all means.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm glad you included that. That's awesome.
So yeah, with some of these, you can kind of see these are some designs. And then if you go down to the one below of my wife and daughter, you can kind of see, the collaging elements of different imagery. So I don't know. I just like to show some of the
Wow.
the digital design. Oh yeah. Uh-oh.
Nah, we'll stay out of there.
Yeah. Yeah. We all
in.
know what that is. But yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, no,
man,
I was
great.
just thinking about this talk, and if you could just go to that one of Rebecca.
That's your wife. Oh, sorry. It's
Yeah.
glitching on me. Okay.
Yeah,
we
right
go.
there. No, I just think, in light of this kind of like creative image making concept too, I was thinking about things that we talk about in the podcast, and I feel like that painter's graveyard and kind of like, what is the painter's graveyard? It's basically unfinished paintings.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like your weird projects. It could be Frederick Church's,
Your flag skies. Yeah.
like that one's not going up in the Met.
Yeah.
But like that is really the lifeblood of your artistic practice. It's not necessarily just getting technically better, but I've learned to embrace the fact that I have a painter's graveyard because that's where all of my thoughts are. That's where my whole artistic project is. And it's really kind of the compost heap.
Should we look at it then? Do you want to look at it?
Well, I don't know. I think I just put a title in there just
okay.
just to mention it. Is that all these different ideas and sketches and things, that's part of the process. And even if it doesn't really come to fruition, it's like a really important part of your workflow to have. have all of your little creations and ideas, even if they don't get polished all the way up all the time.
Yeah.
Anyways.
Yeah, there's a couple things about your process here that it's just, I love, it's so tempting to just paint a photo, right? For a lot of painters. And you've done so much to this photo to make it a painting. And straightening out the couch, just a subtle touch, but man, does it really help that composition. And then the obvious stuff, which no one needs to point out, adding the frame, getting rid of the clothes on the couch top. But also what I hope I'm going to have my students watch this, but I'm always having them do these black and white studies before they start an assignment. Let's say their assignment is to paint a still life with various things they need to focus on and accomplish. A lot of times they'll just set it up and just start painting. And I'm like, no, don't do a dark and light, a grayscale study of it and make sure that in value, the composition is good.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy for them to be like, of course it's good. It's a really cool object. That's the coolest skull I've ever seen. So it's going to make a great painting. No, that's not exactly how it works. Right?
Yeah, well, really, that no tan phase, like that's really big with design, and I'm shocked that there isn't like a great book on that.
That's a good point.
I wish somebody would write it, but the closest thing I've come to was this book called Graphic LA. It's sort of more of a digital painting book, but I feel like there's a lot of rich stuff to discover with design and no tan, and it's part of that artistic practice that when somebody's learning how to paint, they just think, oh, this is silly. What am I doing? Just do a little thumbnail sketch, whatever. But it really forces you to think about the graphic design, the layout of the shapes, and kind of abstract it. Because, right, there's two reads of a painting. There's one from across the room, and then there's one up close. And the no-tan really highlights the look of something from across the room. And if it isn't looking good, like, is it worth our time? Are we want to paint something for 6 months and then the design's not so great?
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but are you familiar with Andrew Loomis? Is it Creative Illustration?
I don't know if I don't have that book, but
I think it does deal with this stuff, if I remember right. Someone will have to correct me. I have it, and I haven't read it in ages, but if my memory serves me right, I'm pretty sure he does have a lot on this whole grisaille design stage. So maybe there is one book, maybe.
All right, Creative Illustration.
Creative Illustration, Andrew Loomis. I think it might not even be a book. My memory's that bad, but I'm pretty sure it is. Anyway, so the question I always ask every guest, if there was one piece of advice that you had or wish you had that really helped you in your career, what is it or what would it be?
Probably surround yourself with people who are doing the thing that you want to be doing. I think I love teaching online and I do it a lot. But you're also isolated. And I think if you really want to pursue it at a deep level, there's something about a community that's kind of pulling in the same direction. And there's just something in the water when you're with other people that are really trying to do the things that you're doing. You learn from each other and it rubs off. I know that's how it was in all of the best schools that I went to. You're around amazing people, you develop relationships, and that's your network. And it's hard to do it alone. It's hard to do it alone for a lot of reasons. You might eventually kind of peel off and go do your own thing, and you kind of have your relationships and you kind of go your own way. But I really feel like there's a dynamic energy of being with other people. Like I remember going to the Florence Academy for the first time and feeling like I'm not supposed to be here.
Really?
Everybody's too good. This is like I'm out of my league. Like this is uncomfortable.
Geez, and you're all the way in Italy. That must have been a kind of a scary thought.
Oh, and the same thing, like I'm a kind of a country boy from Florida in a way.
Mhm.
And the same thing going to New York. It's like you step into Manhattan for the first time. It's like, oh my goodness.
Mm.
But, being out of your league, being around other people that are trying to do the same thing and pulling in that direction, I think that that is really invaluable and it can't help but rub off on you a little bit.
Yeah, that's good advice. And I absolutely believe that. But the funny thing about that is, if you, or let me rephrase that, if I, as someone aspiring to be great, hang out with great people, it sucks to be the great people that have to hang out with me.
Well, I mean, hopefully you find great people that don't feel that way. I mean, there is some stuff out there. There's a lot of ladder climbers that are kind of a little insular and weird, and you just try to find your people
Right,
because
right,
obviously it's not going to all be roses and unicorns in those
right.
kinds of pressure cooker environments. But if you can find people that you resonate with and they appreciate you, obviously that's going to be the best situation. But
Yeah.
even the people that are trying to like get to whatever that place, be a ladder climber or something like that, it still pushes you.
Hmm.
That pressure environment pushes you to do things that maybe if you're just painting on your own, you're not pushing yourself quite as much. The competition aspect of it, it can be brutal, but it also forces you to reach places that maybe you wouldn't get to otherwise.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. This has been fun, Steve.
All
You're
right.
like you are a rock star artist, so it's been a huge honor to have you on the podcast.
Thank you. And just wanted to mention a couple things, if that's all right. I got a book coming out through Quarto on Amazon for pre-order. And yeah, if you ever want to take an online class, I do that on Saturdays. And just really appreciate your time, Jeff, and having me on
Yeah,
here to
my
talk
pleasure.
about my work, man.
And we'll put your website and everything in the show notes so people can find those classes
Okay, great.
and stuff. So great. All right. Hey, thanks again, man. Great to meet
All
you.
right, thanks so much,
All
Jeff.
right.
Thanks for tuning in to the Undraped Artist Podcast. If you enjoyed it, subscribe. And if you could, leave a comment or review. That really helps the channel. Please share the show with your friends, and if you're feeling generous, consider a monthly donation at theundrapedartist.com. Thanks again for watching. We'll see you next week.